Christopher Dorner. By now, everyone has heard that the man is dead and that he actually died from a single gunshot wound as opposed to being burned alive. In this situation where the police claimed that the place burned down by itself and that they had not planned that to happen, yet we can hear the radio communication of them calling for that. That's not what this video is about. What this video is about is Christopher Dorner himself and possibly what he was thinking, what he was doing, and what he intended. It's very easy to jump on the bandwagon of hating Christopher Dorner, saying that, you know, he hated his country or he's a traitor cop or stuff like that. Yet it's also very easy for a lot of people who just simply hate the police to jump on the bandwagon and say, good for him, because he did kill police officers while their position in society is very unpopular. But I think it's more important to understand where he was coming from, what he was doing, and what he intended. To anyone who actually read his manifesto about why it is that he was about to do what it is that he did go on to do, we see something very interesting in the man. He was a man who had dedicated himself to the police force, to the military, and had bought a lot of what it is that we're supposed to believe that our country, regardless of where we're from, is all about. And that a lot of what I think what happened with him is he was unable to resolve this contradiction between what it is, the country that he's fighting for, the country that he swore an oath as a police officer to protect, and what it is that was actually going on. In other words, the way his country actually is. Now, he was a member of the LAPD, and the LAPD is, frankly, possibly the most corrupt police force in the entire Western world, if not at least the entire First World. I mean, there was the very famous case where the LAPD was planting evidence on people so much, just completely making things up in order to get people prosecuted, to the point where the department itself was charged under RICO laws. He was literally charged under laws that were intended to attack organized crime. Dorner himself even remarked about how nothing has changed since the days of Rodney King, where there was such rampant racism going through the entire system, and that he heard open anti-Semitic remarks and remarks defamatory to African Americans. And that this was the culture that he as a police officer was inside of. This was the department that he was defending by being a member of it. He made this quite clear, that he made a distinction between the function of the police that he wanted to defend and the function of the police as it was actually being carried out that he opposed. I'm here to make change and make policy. The culture of the LAPD versus the community and honest, good officers needs to and will change. I am here to correct and calibrate your morale compasses to true north. Now, I genuinely believe that this is what was going on in his mind. He had the vision of what America is, what society is supposed to be, the glorified image that we're fed on television, like all of the police crime dramas like Law and Order, the CSI, which are essentially in nature just pro-police propaganda, which is what they were designed for. And then the reality of what actually happens on the streets day to day, his experience as a beat cop, tremendously contradicted that. And I think that this contradiction in what it is that he was trying to support, what it is, the vision that he was trying to defend, was just unattainable given the material conditions that actually exist with society and the police force. And I think this was a major problem for him. Now, I think we can correctly say that he did hold a particular idealized view of America and the system that he intended to serve from this quote from his manifesto. I am an American by choice. I am a son, I am a brother, I am a military service member. I am a man who has lost complete faith in the system when the system betrayed, slandered, and libeled me. I lived a good life, and though not a religious man, I always stuck to my own personal code of ethics, and always stuck to my shoreline and true north. I didn't need the U.S. Navy to instill honor, courage, and commitment in me, but I thank them for reinforcing it. It's in my DNA. I think this quote by him adequately represents that, and this does serve as proof that he did have a particular view that was fed to him by the government, particularly as someone who has military training. Military training, more than anything else that can exist in society, is indoctrination. That's literally the point of military training. Now, I think all of this began when his perception of that started to get shattered. For example, in 2008, he reported that a commanding officer had used excessive force on a suspect, and that he felt that he had become blackballed after that, and that they were possibly trying to force him to leave, treating him differently because he had done what, according to the Code of Justice, is supposed to be done. And this eventually led to his termination in 2009. Now, we should not be surprised that things like this happen. When society does begin to break down, we get people like Adam Lanza, who, despite their mental illness, the contradictions within capitalist society drive them over the edge. Not to mention things like, because of the contradictions of capitalism, there's a lack of affordable mental health care for people who genuinely need it. As society begins to break down, more incidences like this are going to happen. What's unique about this one is the fact that Dorner was a police officer. He saw from the inside what society was really doing and what the power structure of the society actually represented and how it actually functioned. This shattered his worldview that he had of his own country and the system that he represented in a way that he wasn't able to handle. Because we can see a difference in the actions of him and people like Adam Lanza. This man turned around and attacked the police. There were some innocent people that were killed, but his primary target was the LAPD. He didn't just turn around and proceed to slaughter a bunch of innocent people, although innocent people did die. His target was the police. He had gone directly after an authority figure, one that he felt had wronged him, but his choice was to attack those in society who do hold power. Unfortunately, the man was not class conscious, or at least I didn't see really that he was all that class conscious. I mean, he certainly understood to a limited degree from reading his manifesto that there was a class element to it. Like, he understood that the poor were exploited and the poor were put into a worse situation than the rich are. But I don't think he followed the analysis all the way through to be able to see what the real sources of all of this actually is. Because then I think he would have said a lot more about destroying capitalism itself. But he was not a Marxist. He didn't really see things from a class perspective, which is unfortunate, because then he would have understood it a lot better and perhaps would not have taken the actions that he did and might have gone on with something that was more useful in terms of changing things away from the way they are. But I think that's what's important to keep in mind here when we're actually thinking about Christopher Dorner and what it is that he actually did and what perhaps his real motivations for doing it were. Because I see that there's somewhat of a similarity between him and Andrew Joseph Stack, the man who, I forget what it was exactly that he attacked. I just thought of him right now. He had the famous suicide letter of why he was attacking the government, and he mentioned things like a great social inequality, like his neighbor, a woman who was eating cat food. She was a widow, and she never worked. She was a housewife her whole life, and she was eating cat food in order to survive because her husband was gone. Both of these men understood that it was the system itself. Their full analysis was not Marxist, or at least even radical leftist enough to understand that it was the very nature of the system itself, and that just going around killing cops would not have actually solved the problem. But the problem was something inherent within the system itself. And that is something that we, as Marxists, need to bring to the world, that we need to bring to society, is a proper analysis of the society, the superstructure, and the very functioning of the capitalist system itself, and how it brings about these conditions that create people like Joseph Stack, that create people like Christopher Dorner. That's what we need to do. And I think it's a full analysis of everything that we have in our society is what we really need. And this is something that we need to keep in mind when we think about people like Christopher Dorner. Hey Mouse Rebel News fans, I just wanted to let you know that I've released a new ebook debunking the claims made by Trevor Luden that Barack Obama is a communist. He made a challenge that if anybody could refute his proof that Obama is a communist, that he would stop calling him one and take his own book calling him one off the market. So if you want, head over to the MRN bookstore on lulu.com and check it out.
Hey,